we turn to Joseph Williams, journalist and former senior editor at U.S. News and World Report. Joseph, good to see you again.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
I'm good. And let's talk a bit about the Trump administration going after student loan borrowers who are behind in payments and in default as well. Now, for those in default, the administration could come after their wages. And man, this really escalated quickly. Kind of put it in context for us.
Well, President Trump is going after or ending a program that began during the pandemic when the U.S. economy was basically shut down and kind of locked up, to try to give a little bit of breathing room to people who have student loans. And if they were in default or if they were in collections or even close to it, you got a breather. You weren't able to pay the loan, you didn't have to pay the loan rather, or make payments on the loan for a good 5 years. Now, President Trump, now that he's back in office, is slamming the door on that particular program and saying to the student borrowers, you got to pay up now or face the consequences. Now, that means anything, as like you said, garnishing wages, not collecting, or collecting rather, the tax refunds that are owed some borrowers, and even coming after their assets. Now, this is something that's pretty draconian for people who have basically been able to not think about this for 5 years, and all of a sudden, it's back on the table, it's front and center, and likely keeping many people up at night.
Yeah, and let's put this in perspective, because when I went to college, it was markedly cheaper than it is for young people today, and over the past decade and a half or so, it really got expensive fast. Some 43 million people in the U.S. now have student loan debt. That's a lot, and a significant portion of those people, as much as 20%, are in default.
Well, and that's part of the problem here, is that while President Trump is attempting to make a revenue collection deal out of this, presumably to increase government income and to kind of offset the tax cuts that he's planning, you have a whole legion, a whole class, a whole generation of borrowers who did this simply to try to get ahead. And what he's doing is he's kind of poking the wound rather than trying to address it and heal it, which is that college costs are way beyond control. They're out of control. You're talking 7, 8 figures just in order to get a bachelor's degree, let's not even talk about a graduate degree. And people are saying that you need this degree to get ahead. You can't get a job that earns a decent wage without it. So borrowers are left with a choice. Borrowers whose parents can't stroke a check for tuition are left with a really hard choice. Either take up the loan and cross your fingers that you're going to get a job that can pay it, or not go to college at all and see what you can do without a bachelor's degree, which is not a very optimistic proposition.
And let's look what happened in the past 4 years. The Biden administration famously tried to cancel student loan debt. The U.S. Supreme Court eventually knocked down Biden's efforts. Still, he was able to cancel about $183 billion in student loan debt. Now, Trump, for his part, says he doesn't want taxpayers on the hook for these student loan debts. So let's dig a bit deeper into what you're talking about. There are some families with generational wealth who can afford to put their youngsters through school, or at least offset it to a degree. And then there are some trying to lift their way out and running into just red tape. I mean, red figures that are going to haunt them for years.
Yeah, whatever it is, it doesn't look good, and people are seeing red, as you said. Now, let's zoom back even further and talk about why this is the case in the first place. Now, we've already addressed the fact that college is way more expensive than it was. There are various factors for that. But the reason why government is encouraging people to take out these loans is it is in the national interest. We're supposed to be generating a class of educated people that supposedly could create the next technological breakthrough, or write the next novel, or do something great that reflects very well on America and lifts the American economy at the same time. You'll note that in the immigration issue, we have a really tough time producing our own engineers, producing our own scientists, our technologists. So we import them from overseas. Now, if we're cutting off that access by making immigration more restrictive, and we aren't making it easier for people to get college degrees, the United States is going to be in a world of hurt in about 10 or 15 years. Not to mention the fact that the tariffs and what people are predicting is a coming recession is only going to compound things for these student borrowers who may be looking at layoffs, who might be looking at a reduction in income. That will put them further behind the 8 ball and make for a more terrible economic mess than we're already predicting.
That's a good point. And once, student loan payments go into collections, how bad is this going to be for the individual? Because credit scores, tax refund, wages, we're in uncharted territory here.
Well, absolutely. And many times employers are looking at credit scores before making a job offer. They want to find out if this person is of good character, if they can be trusted. And if you have a black mark on your credit, it drives it down. If you have a collection, it drives it down, makes it less easy, it makes it harder to get a job, and makes it harder to move on in society. Say, buy a house, buy a car. So you're looking at real long-term damage for people who are in default and could be in default for no fault of their own. They might have had to drop out to take care of a parent. They might not have been able to finish because the degree became too expensive, yet they're on the hook for loans that they don't even, that they're not even really able to take advantage of. So in a lot of senses, Biden kind of had the right idea, might not have been legal, the court said so, but this, I think, definitely is a little too draconian and will hurt more people and the country in the longer run than problems that it will solve right now.
And let's pick up on that too, because the long-term financial health, if someone gets a job out of school and say they have $150,000 in student loan debt, which is not unrealistic, and it's tough to pay off $150 a month, you pay that forever.
Yeah, you do, especially at such a long-term proposition that you have. It's not like buying a house or buying a car. These loans get paid until they get paid off. And if you have this trailing over your credit score, you have this hanging over your head as a job prospect, you have to fight really, really hard to get a job that will allow you to afford to repay the loans in the first place. You have many people with six-figure college debt working at Starbucks, working in retail, because they simply can't break through into the industry that they were trained. So you've got a lot of compounding problems here that are probably going to peak in another 6-7 months or so that the United States is going to have to grapple with, and it may not be pretty at the outcome.